Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, March 7th, 2024, and I thought I might possibly be late to the microphone today, but my blazing speed has made it possible for us to get back and in place for our regular 9 a.m. start time. No skin off my nose. Like, literally. I didn't go any place where they might have taken skin off my nose, but we had a dental, we'll call it an emergency, in the sense that it made us get up and run out to the dentist at 8 a.m., which is not something we would normally voluntarily do. But no pain involved, for one thing. So that's nice and all taken care of. And quick in and out to replace a filling and no additional drilling required. So fantastic. It took all of about 5 minutes. And here we are. We do things quickly when we're pressed to do so before airtime here on KITM. Greg has mentioned a couple of times having to run kids to school when they miss the bus and somehow being able to do it in 30 seconds or less. It's not exactly that quick, but well, this is one of the reasons we live out in what used to be exurbs, now just regular suburbs, I guess. Just traffic congestion. It's an issue, but local shuttling, not such a big deal, and we're thankful for it. And glad to be out of the urbanized traffic pressure zone for some years now. Not that it's encouraged any of the kids to learn to drive themselves at any point. Anyway, so here we are. Everything's fine. Time to get rolling, and we've got plenty of stories to cover. Lots happening. Nikkki Haley did, in fact, drop out, as we said yesterday, though she won the Vermont primary. And then, I guess the still lingering story from the primaries, if it even is one, was, well, Dean Phillips said, so many years ago, that if he did not, I don't know what the hell he said, but basically said if he didn't do well, right, for Super Tuesday, that he would drop out. I forget how he set it up. But at any rate, he has lived up to that promise. Well, I wondered whether that was going to be the case, and so did Greg, which is why he brought it up. And I thought, well, he may just do it to be the kind, he's not going anywhere, he's not going to win the nomination. Why not say, see, I'm a man of my word. When I say I'm going to drop out following Super Tuesday, I'm going to do it, right? There was really no reason for him not to do that. So he did it. So there you go. So now we can have that bit of good feeling about Dean Phillips, and he also said, yeah, I'm going to get behind the nominee and endorse. So that's good. And I guess we'll take it for whatever it's worth. Meanwhile, yes, other endorsements for the other guy, the former dude who's trying to force his way back into the rest of our lives. Got the endorsement of Mitch McConnell, which is, whatever. It was going to happen. It's upsetting. It's disgusting. I'm just thinking back to, that brief moment post January 6th when he was actually, semi-honest sounding and clear about just how dangerous Donald Trump really was to our country. But that faded very quickly as soon as it turned into an actual impeachment with an opportunity to do something about it. He backed off. And yes, I guess I'll point out only because others are making this notation, and Justice is too. He reminds me of it, and there's lots of writing. But we got to wait and see what the hell it actually is. But there was this weirdly timed story of Mitch McConnell's sister-in-law, right? Elaine Chao's sister, who died, was in a car accident, but it's like it's the kind of car accident that gets you dramatic music because, well, one, she was driving a Tesla, which is, I don't know what else. What do we say about that one?
Wrong, sir.
Yeah. Wrong. Don't be driving a Tesla. But apparently, I didn't read the whole Why not? I'm not certain why I was distracted. They don't know what the hell's going on here. They're investigating it because she was in a Tesla, and the Tesla, I guess, drove itself maybe into a lake and drowned her. And they're looking this thing up. Starlink. Greg says Starlink sent her into the lake. Let's blame them. Why not? And sent her into the lake, and she drowned, and that's terrible. And yet they're not. So authorities down in Texas, and it is Texas, are saying, well, I mean, there's a blaring headline. There's an investigation as a, suspicious death. Maybe she was murdered, and maybe. But yeah, I think basically all they're saying right now is, well, we don't know why the car would drive itself into the lake, so we're investigating it. And, for the sake, when you're investigating someone's death, it's because you're like, well, what did cause this death? So is it suspicious circumstances? Yes. Even if they don't actually believe they're investigating a murder, they still say, well, it's suspicious circumstances. A car drove itself into the lake. You're not suspicious of that? I am. I agree. And that's all they're saying at this point. But, while you're reporting the news and while you're worrying about Trump threatening people and the number of Republicans who've said they've left public life because they actually felt physically unsafe because of their opposition to Trump, I don't know that translates to Elaine Chao's sister, but there you have it. It's a thing to talk about, and it really gets you around to other subjects you should be talking about, like actual people who actually do say, I do feel threatened by Trump, and that's a dangerous thing for the United States of America. And some people are coming around to saying that. Some people have said it, and it doesn't matter. Some places, like the New York Times, will editorialize about it, and yet do dumb things like say, yeah, but Joe Biden is old, and that's the takeaway. Lots happening, lots to comment on, but we're here at 9 o'clock to do it. That's the important thing. Good morning, Greg Dworkin, also here at 9 o'clock. No appointments this morning. Excellent. Clear schedule. How are you doing?
We're doing fine. Good. The Mitch McConnell story that struck me actually wasn't the Elaine Chao one. That's kind of like that's weird. And
yes.
Of course you have to investigate.
We are weird here. Right. I mean, a car is in the lake. Investigate that.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be in the lake, so check out what happened.
That's right. I mean, they're a shipping company, the Chows, but this was a car.
Right, they have an affinity to water, but that's not what's going on here.
No, they take boats. They know how to deal with water. So when a Chow drowns, something's wrong.
Something's not right. So, no, that's not the story that struck me. The story that struck me was a comment by Sergeant Gunnell, one of the Capitol Police folks involved in January 6th.
Close friend of Sergeant Pepper, I understand.
Well, what he said was, the Sicknick family, Brian Sicknick, also a Capitol Police officer who died shortly after, said, the Sicknick family absolutely refused to shake Mitch McConnell's outstretched hand.
Yes, and not without some
reason.
Given
his endorsement of Donald Trump, they were right to do so.
They knew before the rest of us did.
That's my point, really. We're talking about the Capitol Police here. Some folks that actually work with these folks.
I know what he's going to do.
They know exactly who they are.
It's not like they don't have time to read the newspaper before they come to work, even if they don't. They're not spying on people.
They know who they are, and they know exactly who Mitch McConnell is. And their reaction to Mitch McConnell was, "Look, I know who this guy is. He's going to sell us out," and he did.
Yep. All right. Well,
I'm not shaking his hand.
I guess they're smart.
That's not an endorsement,
right? That's not. It can't be construed as an endorsement. Well, McConnell, he's a terrible person.
He is. I mean, the fact is he's retiring.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't have, it's not because he's forced to do this because he's running again.
That's true. I guess there's this. I mean, we don't need any convincing, but there are people out there who are like, it's polite when an old person who's been in quote unquote public service for a long time leaves, you say nice-ish things about him and you just hold your tongue. And no, there's no real reason to do that.
We'll do that about Dean Phillips.
I guess so. I mean, Dean Phillips is among the normal crowd.
We won't do it about Katie Porter, but that's another story. But
McConnell is a different kind of person in that, how many times have we told the story? Well, this or that Republican is retiring, so they'll finally tell the truth or say what they really mean or tell us how dangerous Donald Trump really is.
And some of them have.
And here is Mitch McConnell with that opportunity and says, no, I'm going to bolster the PR story and knuckle under and endorse as I'm on my way out the door.
Yeah. So it's just it just puts things
Do
in
let
perspective.
the door hit you in the ass.
They're cowards, basically.
Yes. In fact, I instruct the door to hit you in the face.
And we always go with the party. Why? There's nothing forcing you to do that. You don't need to do this. Your wife is incredibly wealthy. You don't need to be on boards, and you don't need
that's right.
welfare.
That's
you don't
true.
need any of that. Why are you doing this?
I don't know. Well, in that case, let the door hit you in the knees before you even try to pass through it on the way out, and then also
and
hit you
before
in the
people
ass.
get into the Elaine Chow's sister pushing
We don't need to.
McConnell
We've done
pressure. That's why he did. The guy had clear health issues.
Yes.
He froze several times for minutes.
Right. True.
On camera.
He was assaulted by his patio furniture.
He didn't need any pushing out. He was going.
Right. If you push him, he's going to topple.
He did that too.
Yeah.
He fell several times.
Yes. He's. Yeah. No. He was going to leave. He's old and not doing great or whatever. And his sister-in-law, I'm sure, had nothing to do with it. Didn't
Nothing
help.
whatsoever to do with
I'm
it.
sure. Like, all right. Well, now I'll have a few minutes free to go take care of her business.
In other words, it wasn't necessary. The fact that people are saying that the Starlink sent her into the lake, has nothing to do with it.
Many people are saying this. So what can you do?
In any case. So let's get back to Super Tuesday, because I think there's a lot of stuff that happened there. Of course, it led to Mitch McConnell's
better than
endorsement.
we thought.
And also, you can't say, well, he's old and therefore, obviously young people did it. Young kin people did it. We knew everybody who was going to do this, because basically Haley's out. Therefore, Trump is the presumptive nominee. But a really interesting thing happened because of that.
On the way to, yes.
And it has to do with vibes.
Oh.
And it has to do with Zekas. And what happened is,
kids love vibes.
Once it's clear that Dean Phillips is out and says, of course, I'm going to back Biden. He's a wonderful person. I can't tell you why I was doing this. That's not important.
I'm not sure either. But okay. Now he's semi-famous.
Let's lead with invitation, not confrontation, to welcome Haley supporters, Trump supporters, uncommitted supporters. Let's get this done. He says. That's what he said on the way out.
All right.
And so the Washington Post and the New York Times, both of them, and I don't have these stories at my fingertips, but both of them immediately published stories once Haley was out.
Yeah.
That Trump did very well on Super Tuesday, but exposed his weaknesses. And it's like they were saving it for when he was the nominee, rather than dare to say that while Haley was still running, as if saying the truth was going to somehow distort what people thought or voted. It was just weird, but they're doing that.
That is odd. Okay. Maybe, however it works out in the end, maybe then people will be able to point back to it and say, aha, see, it was strategic. They were doing this. They were trying
because it's about the headline. I'm not talking about the stories. The stories really haven't altered. They never alter. But people don't read the frickin' stories. They read the headlines.
That's true. We have data for that.
Yeah. And so the headlines were very clear.
Well, they're shorter headlines.
It was short. Trump's, issues exposed in both papers. But a definite zeitgeist about that. And Biden, of course, now is freed up to start attacking Trump, which he's starting to do. So that happened.
You had my permission the whole time.
Part of Super Tuesday was the California primary.
Yes.
And unlike Dean Phillips, who graciously left the race, Katie Porter did not graciously leave the race.
No.
What happened, of course, is that Adam Schiff won. Steve Garvey came in second. Mm-hmm. And no nonsense, please, about how Democrats are responsible for Trump because they keep trying to support other people than Trump, and therefore I had to support him. Republicans supported Steve Garvey. That's why he finished second. The fact that he finished second had nothing to do with Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff was promoting him. He wanted to have an Adam Schiff versus Steve Garvey. He got what he wanted. But the reason Katie Porter finished third is she ran a not-so-good race.
Oh. Well, that could happen.
I mean, she and Barbara Lee together didn't beat Adam Schiff. So on her way out, she made the huge mistake of saying the reason I lost is this election was rigged.
She did,
and all of a sudden alarm bells go off and say, "What? What are you talking about? After Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020, you're saying rigged? You can't use that word. It's forbidden."
Even Bernie Sanders.
Okay, let me explain. All right, you're explaining, you're losing. So an explanatory note came out. When I said rigged, what I really meant is the billionaires were spending more money. Well, who cares how freaking much money they spent? You lost.
Yeah, well,
be gracious
sometimes
as
related,
you leave.
Yeah.
Now, am I left punching? No. I'm trying to point out there's ways to do things, and there's ways not to do things. Dean Phillips leaving. Here's a case where everything about Dean Phillips was awful except the way he left. And here's a case where everything that Katie Porter did was great except for the way she left.
Yeah.
And so which one is worse? Well, it's today's, you left yesterday, and therefore that's what I remember. That we're wind up talking about. But what I'm trying to do is contrast good ways to do things, bad ways to do things. Yeah. Here's a story
of a lovely lady.
Trump basically is bashing.
What? No. Who?
Nikkei Haley voters.
Well, sure. He bashes everybody. But yeah, this is the point of what he's supposed to be making
may I
nice.
point out that's really stupid?
You may.
He needs Haley voters to win. Biden, on the other hand, and this is a quote, Donald Trump made it clear he doesn't want Nikki Haley supporters. I want to be clear. There's a place for them in my campaign.
All right.
Never Trumpers, you're welcome, he's saying. I know there's a lot we won't agree on, but the fundamental issues of preserving American democracy, on standing up for the rule of law, on treating each other with decency and dignity and respect, on preserving NATO, standing up to America's adversaries, I hope and believe we can find common ground. Now, you look at this and say, oh, that's the Democrats again. As soon as they can, they're not trying to get the left supporters, the ones who are challenging Biden but never show up at Republicans' place, claiming that the things aren't going well in the Middle East. It's all Democrats' fault. You're not going after us to try to convince us of anything. We've already told you we're not going to speak to you.
Well, then.
And you're not going after. You're going to pivot and try to get Haley supporters. I knew you were more conservative than you said. I always said, you just tear your hair and say, do you know anything about politics at all?
I mean, no, but
Haley's voters are there for the taking. You won't get all of them, but it's a ripe opportunity. Trump is already saying he doesn't want them. He'll back that up, back off of that rather. But, nonetheless, he'll try to make up. But he said it. He said what he thought. He said what he thinks. And Biden says, I see an opening. I'm going to take it. It's going to help me get reelected. And you may not like that I seem to be a little bit more conservative than you wanted me to be, but it's an election year.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to talk about the border. I'm going to make a deal, border plus Ukraine. I'm going to do these things because, firstly, it's actually what voters want. And secondly, it's not terrible because it's not what we wanted, but we don't have the votes. This is what you need to do to get the votes. Again, practical politics. I know you don't like politics, but that's what you have to do. And so Biden is absolutely positively going to do this, and you're going to see that in the State of the Union. He's going to get up there and he's going to say, ladies and gentlemen, the State of the Union is strong.
I know. I hate when they do this now. It is the State of the Union.
The State of the Union is sound.
Right.
And the sound of the State of the Union is Taylor Swift, and she didn't say she's going to vote for me, but she did say come out and vote, so you better listen to her. That's the sound of America. And then he's going to draw a contrast between himself and the Trumpers, and he's going to he ought to invite Nikki Haley into the special box as a special guest. She may not come, but the outreach is there.
Maybe. I mean, the outreach would be there.
I'm just telling you, this is what's going to happen. This is what he's going to go for, and people will start, yammering about it. And of course, he's going to do it. It's the obvious play.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm running for election, and I would like it if you voted for me.
I'd like everybody to vote for me.
I mean, go for 100% if you
Yeah,
why not? It doesn't mean you have to change your policy.
Everybody who's unhappy with my Israel policy to vote for me, I'll be happy to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. Okay. Well, these other people here, anyway. Haley voters, I'd like to talk to you. Okay. Well, we'll listen. All right. Fine.
Right. There's nothing. It's the timing. Well, it is what it is. She dropped out today. Yesterday. You're gonna have this timing now. I guess they're probably also these angry left holdouts, and they may come back, they may not, I don't know, but they're probably also reading at the same time interviews with Nikkki Haley voters where they say, as was passed around the internet yesterday, dumb things like, I just I couldn't vote for Trump, he's terrible, he's a liar, he's bad for America, but I guess I'll vote for him because I can't vote for Biden because old. He's younger than me, but old, and I don't know, I just have vibes about him, and so the end. And so I'm sure there are lots of people saying, you're courting these people? They're really not going to come. Well, those ones won't, but other ones won't.
Although maybe
there are 20.
People really don't know what they're going to do
on their street
now and November. Yeah. And the idea that somebody like that, who's obviously voicing the, remember that guy in South Carolina
I remember a guy who
I'm voting for Trump because my family and because I get better and well, what if he's convicted? My
personal family.
Well, that's actually going to make me rethink everything. Well, he's not alone.
No, you're right. And at the same time, neither are the dummies that said things to the newspapers.
Sure, Trump will get votes. It's not going to be unanimous. That's not the point. Tom Nicholas, Radio Free Tom on Twitter, had something very funny to say. He said, reporters should stop calling the election rematch nobody wants because apparently millions of people actually wanted it.
Well, I guess so. They manifest it in weird ways, and they wish they had other choices.
But to me, that was Yogi Berra, right? Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
Yeah. These votes are being cast
for these elections because, nobody wants it. Well, why do they keep turning out for these elections then? Well, it doesn't fit our narrative. Well, maybe you should rewrite the narrative.
Yeah, right. It doesn't. It's not everybody's first choice necessarily. Yeah, you can address that with different voting systems, but the one that there is now is this one. And look, the vast majority of Democratic voters and the vast majority of other voters are making the calculus. This is a juggernaut that's not going to be stopped unless something drastic like somebody dying happens. So let's just get ready for it. Is it the match of the century that I wanted?
The Biden campaign has said all along, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be Biden versus Trump. And there are people who still don't accept, as of Super Tuesday, accept it.
Yeah. Right. And, and if something were to happen, you're not going to get any points for saying, I told you. Look, everybody, every day, everybody goes about their business on the assumption they're not going to die that day. So what do you want? Right. This is the match that's happening. You
Dan
don't
Pfeiffer
like it?
Was writing about
Me
this also was kind of funny.
Although
he says, if Haley can't beat Trump in Virginia, she can't beat him anywhere other than very liberal Vermont. So, if you can't beat Trump in Virginia, you can't beat Trump, and Vermont doesn't count.
Yeah, or D.C., which is close, but doesn't count.
So, despite only winning 2 contests, this wasn't really close. However, Haley voters are a ripe target for Biden, he writes. Many political observers, myself included, point to the number of Haley voters who told exit pollsters they won't vote for Trump as a glaring warning sign. And again, a lot of them are Democrats, but even more of them, 3 times whatever Democratic number you get in any given state, are independents. And so if they say they can't vote for Trump, this is like a blaring siren.
Yes.
And people like Matthew Dowd poo-poo it and say, 90% are going to vote for him anyway. Actually, it may, because of this glaring siren, be 87. That 3% may be the difference between winning and losing close states.
Keep reminding us of that, and that is absolutely true. And, there's also a sort of a confirmation bias that we have. Like, if you interviewed 100 Haley supporters and half of them, whatever percentage, say, I'm going to vote for Trump anyway, and give you a dumb reason for it, versus people said, no, I said I wasn't going to vote for him and I'm not. Which one would you screenshot and pass around on social media? And the answer is the one that makes people angry because she's such a dummy. She says all these things.
You get clicks, right?
Yeah.
So Pfeiffer writes, recently there's been some pushback to the notion that because polls show that many Haley supporters voted for Biden in 2020, the recent New York Times Siena poll found 48% of Haley voters voted for Biden.
Oh.
The assertion is that Trump was never going to get these votes anyway, Or worse, Democrats are propping up the Haley effort, a la Schiff and Garvey.
No.
Some of these Haley voters would never vote for Trump, sure. They will certainly choose Biden over Trump. That doesn't mean Haley's campaign hadn't exposed Trump's vulnerabilities. The half of Haley supporters who voted for Trump, not the ones who didn't vote for Trump, but the ones who voted for Trump or didn't vote for either, still make up a significant number of votes.
Yes.
In Michigan last week, Haley received 300,000 votes. Biden won the state by 150,000 in 2020. You get a slice of that, it matters. In Virginia, a purple state, Haley received 220,000 votes. All across the country, Haley's getting enough votes that even if only a portion of her supporters are new or persuadable Trump voters, they could be decisive. And perhaps more importantly, 76% of Haley voters in the Virginia primary won't commit to supporting the nominee. In North Carolina, 61%. The problem for Trump is you need more than just MAGA voters to win the presidency. Does that sound familiar? I kept saying that.
Yes.
I keep saying that. The problem is the moderates like Youngkin who go along with him because they're not really moderates, but moderate voters who like Youngkin who go along with him. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's why Biden's going to go after Haley voters.
Well, yeah, you got to people who are claimed to be moderates who would be turned off by the extremism. Well, what happens if you expose them consistently to the extremism? I don't know, but let's try it.
We're going to find out in North Carolina when we get to that governor race.
Oh, yeah.
That's after the break. If you know a Nikkki Haley voter fight for rights, they can immediately become a target for persuasion, but give them a few days to process it. Meanwhile, Trump's struggles continue.
Yeah.
I've made this point after every primary. You may even be sick of reading it, but I think it's important for understanding how non-MAGA voters view Trump. Weakness.
I hope so.
1 in 3 Virginia primary voters think Trump is not mentally and physically fit to be president.
Which
a lot of people.
Yeah, well, good, because he's not, and I'm glad they're processing it. But yeah, it doesn't make clicks, does it? Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com.
Is known to have issues.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show, where we just continue to have a show. You know what happens during the break?
We have a conversation?
Yeah. Well, we say, God, people, you believe these Trump supporters are. Anyway, but yeah, we don't stop talking just because you can't hear us. Ha-ha. So, yeah, maybe we can sell the behind the scenes, except it's just not interesting. It's the same story. We don't tell you stuff that we're not going to, there's nothing secret. We come back and tell you what it was. That's all.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't want you to think that we're secretly, like, professionally planning. Okay, in the next segment, we'll do this, this, and this. That almost never happens.
Not at all. That's certainly something we could be using the breaks for. Usually we say, can you believe what we just said in that first segment? Wow, I wish there were not an interruption.
Never.
Yeah. So therefore, we don't know what's coming next.
Sorry.
Yeah,
you lose all the spontaneity
occasionally,
if you do that.
Occasionally, I just found out I have to leave immediately, or my son missed the bus, or whatever. But that's
whatever.
No planning.
So listen, let me talk to you about again, I've talked about this before. One of my pet peeves is that people who are not happy with what's going on in Gaza only pick on Democrats. And to give you an idea of just how stupid that is.
All right.
This is a piece from NBC News, not MSNBC, NBC News.
That is stupid.
Trump breaks silence on Israel's military campaign in Gaza. And let me give you the money quote. Finish the problem, end quote. The former president has largely avoided weighing in on Gaza as President Joe Biden has faced criticism from within the Democratic coalition over his support for Israel. Now, whatever you think of Biden's approach to Israel, he is clearly struggling with a Middle East problem, never easy to fix. Trying to balance things, get a ceasefire, given the fact that he's not really in control of what Israel does. That just seems pretty obvious. Now, how well he does that or how not well he does that, you can judge for yourself. But the idea that he's not trying is absurd.
Okay.
Trump, on the other hand, says, kill them all.
Right.
You're telling me that there's no difference between them, or that what Trump said doesn't bother you, so you're not going to protest? That's bullshit.
I can't believe you just said.
That's bullshit.
It sounded almost exactly like your recorded
sample.
That's where I got
it from. I didn't know the word until I heard that little segment there.
Well, there you go. We do have that.
But I can't make the sound of the horn.
Oh.
While I say I haven't learned how to do that yet. You know.
It'll work. Yes. Well, it does feel that way, doesn't it? It is, and there's lots of reasons for it, and some are better than others. But yeah, you should keep that in mind. And I know that you can get yourself to the conclusion, well, the United States munitions arrive one way or the other, whether you say you're crying about it or celebrating it. So what's the difference? And the answer, I think, the answer is actually inherent, probably a little bit, in why at least some people decide to protest Democrats while leaving Republicans alone, is they know that Republicans won't listen to them and will feel nothing about ignoring them, whereas they get the sense,
well, that happened.
There
was a Republican representative in Congress, and I had that story, and I actually cut it out because our list was already too long, who was being pursued by somebody protesting Gaza.
Well,
and
that's
as you know, it's one of these things where he's walking down the hall and people are talking to him, and he keeps walking, and they're like behind him, and he doesn't look at them, and he keeps walking. And they say, you know, something about Gaza. And he said, I don't care. I think they should all die anyway.
Oh.
And the person says, that's terrible. I'm Palestinian. And he stops and turns around and says, oh, well, let me tell you to your face. I think they're all terrible. We should all, should all die. You know. And so there was that one time where somebody actually was protesting a Republican. Well, and that's what you got as an answer.
Yeah.
And you're telling me you don't see a difference between the two. You're crazy.
Yeah. Well, that guy probably would say, no, I do see a difference. But, you know, what's happening to them? Well, there's a number of reasons why it's not penetrating with others. Like, for instance, a lot of the people who are doing the protesting aren't Palestinian, which is an interesting thing. Just in the wild swirl of leftist thought in general, you say, well, where are the people who say that that's cultural appropriation all the time? By the way, you wearing keffiyehs and protesting and on behalf of, you know, whereas it's perfectly reasonable. Look, you know, you don't have to be Palestinian to understand what's going on, but it is interesting that, you know, there in that, I don't know what to say, that swirl of issues, there is that. You know, like running into the hemp milk contingency is you run into people who will say, yeah, that's cultural appropriation for you to be protesting on behalf of Palestinians. But yes, there's it was good for an actual Palestinian to experience that, in the sense that you should be reminded that there is, in fact, a difference. And presumably that person will say, I see the difference. Yes, if I didn't before, I see it now. At the same time, you know,
you're still entitled to protest.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You know?
But
no doubt about that. You got to do it, and and you should be everywhere. But yes, you should also say, yeah, there's a group of people that not only won't listen to us, but who actively want this to continue. It's important they're to us. We recognize we're doing this because
if you say they're lost,
we know Democrats.
Then that means, okay, then you're not voting for them. No, I have to say that I might, because otherwise, how will I put pressure?
Yeah.
And so if that's your approach, then you're doing it clumsily, and it doesn't look like that's really going to be of much use, because you're either lying or you're crazy.
Yeah, well, you should be upfront about that too, and you have to honestly keep the possibility that you might vote for them open if you hope to persuade them. And I guess that's why they're not chiefly why they're not protesting against Republicans.
Right,
There's no chance. But they should then acknowledge, look, I know that at least Democrats, I am hoping, will feel the pressure and will feel the moment and maybe come around, and that's why I protest them. Right, okay, so then that's the difference, yes? And for the people who say, yes, that is the difference, those are the people we want to talk to. And for no, because I want to vote for whatever, this fringe party, that one. Okay, I know. But then you can't really be terribly surprised when they don't respond to you in the way that you want. You might be surprised when the Republicans turn around and say, I actually do endorse the murder of hundreds of thousands. Well, okay, bad. You don't see the difference between people who turn around and say, I'm so frustrated, I don't know how to answer you because I want to give the right answer. As there's another party out there that says, we want to give the wrong answer. Well, then there is a difference. Okay, terrific.
Everybody has the right to protest. To me, you should really try to protest responsibly in a way that will actually get some results, rather than just make everybody mad at you.
Yep. And it's hard to always know where that line is, and sometimes people aim at the wrong thing. I was watching the video of people following AOC around trying to get her to say the word genocide on their camera, which, yeah, that's where you run into, like, well, one, what are you doing with your time? But two, as they're following her and she's explaining her position, and they plead back, well, we just want you to just say the word. That's all we want. That was the key word for me. That's all we want is to get you to say the word.
No,
really?
Actually, you would really like, hopefully you want more than that.
Presumably you're here to get the end of a genocide, is what you said.
Justice. You want a whole bunch of other stuff. You don't just want that. And meanwhile, sir,
well, then don't say that. Yeah, right. And I don't know. Yeah, that was revealing to me. Well, all we want is that. Wow, I thought you were here for a higher purpose than just getting a word on camera. Like that really was revealing. I understand that that's not what you meant, but then you need to have more clarity in what you meant.
Again, to be clear, I hate what's going on there, and I want Netanyahu out because he's the cause of it, not Biden. So that's why I'm turning to this. This is a couple of stories in Jerusalem Post, Times of Israel, Haaretz, they're all covering it because it's a really big deal. 1921, so it's about 3 years ago, there was a disaster that happened in Israel because an ultra-Orthodox celebration that happens on a Jewish holiday called Lag BaOmer.
One of our favorites.
People gather at a rabbi's grave. I don't know why, but they do. And they do it every year. And so it was one of those giant, gatherings. And the pathway to it was narrow. The ground was slick. People fell. Other people kept pushing ahead and coming anyway. Those on the ground couldn't get up. They suffocated. 45 people died because of the crowd control that wasn't there. And so that's called the Mount Meron disaster.
All right.
And there was a public inquiry into this, which was released yesterday in Israel. And this article on Haaretz starts, if they had grabbed my coat lapels and said, look, there's going to be a terrible disaster, I promise you I would have handled it, declared Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the State Commission of Inquiry into the Meron disaster. Earlier, he said he was presented with letters. Netanyahu was presented with reports by the state comptroller, other warnings he had received over the years before the events at the site. Time after time, the prime minister tried to evade responsibility. He said things like, I didn't know, I didn't investigate deeply, I don't recall, I don't know, I didn't receive it, I didn't deal with that. The prime minister's name is on thousands of requests. I can only be responsible for a thing I see. You can't be responsible for what you don't know. The inquiry said, we don't buy any of that. No. You're responsible. The only reason we're not sanctioning you is because you're prime minister right now.
Well, what would the sanction be?
But you did this.
Okay.
And Haaretz stepped back and said, this is a double disaster here because we haven't even started with the investigation of October 7th. But what we're seeing is how Netanyahu's going to respond. And what we're seeing is whatever commission is set up, rejecting that response.
Yeah, how could I have known? Yeah,
it's the same thing he always does. It's not working, and open your eyes, people. So they titled this "One Fiasco After Another." Moran Disaster Report also finds Netanyahu guilty for October 7th. They didn't, but what they're saying is the method is guilty. The commission's members were not impressed by Netanyahu's argument that you can't be responsible for what you don't know. Once the October 7th massacre, forewarned for years, undergoes investigation, he won't be able to rely on this defense. So what I'm saying is that there's pressure on Netanyahu every day that's building in all sorts of different ways. The other day we talked about drafting yeshiva students, which is still on the table, putting pressure on him. There's this. There's whatever Biden external pressure does. Biden alone can't change what Netanyahu's going to do. I think Netanyahu's like Trump and like most Republicans in Congress. They're never going to change. You have to get them out. But there's pressure building to do exactly that. And so, between the protests on the streets, this, that, everything else, again, things to watch. They look stable. They're not stable is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, and remember also that
the Jenga tower is stable.
The whole shtick of Netanyahu and the parties he leads is, I'm the one and only guy who can see things coming and keep us safe. And
yes, you're the one and only guy that got us in this mess.
You're not. Yeah. Well, there's that. And there's a good argument to be made that you are either creating these things, so you would be extra responsible and presumably extra capable of seeing them coming, but apparently you're not. And every time, over and over again, I didn't know, I didn't see, I couldn't predict. All right, well then you're not the guy you said you were.
Right. I mean, this is the equivalent of Netanyahu saying, "Listen,
never mind,
insurrections are terrible. I'm the only guy that could handle an insurrection."
Yeah.
Because I'm the only one that's strong.
This is the argument you might make to somebody who might still be considering supporting him. Like this is the reason you support him. Presumably, is he's got the vision and he can keep us safe. Well, he can't and he doesn't, and it's happened over and over and over again.
Okay, well, look, mastery of English and time Americans spent here means he has a wonderful relationship with the United States. What did we say about that before with that bullhorn?
Yeah,
it's all bullshit.
That's right. Well, we take care of it that way. You can just cue me now. We'll do the whole thing as already pre-censorship horned. I think I have a second one of you here.
Anyway, that happened. I wanted to get that in. I think it's all, of a piece with protesting about Gaza. It's part of the big picture, and it's good to see the whole big picture. Mm-hmm. And if there's anybody that's responsible, it's Hamas and Netanyahu. And that doesn't include Biden, and it doesn't include Democrats who are really trying to, help in some fashion, even though they don't know how to help.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you don't protest them, but it means you broaden your protest, perhaps. I guess. Yeah. Why not? If it's a genocide and the world needs to know, why is there anybody you wouldn't be protesting?
Or take another tack, okay?
Except me. Leave me alone.
You want to protest? Okay. I'm prepared to listen. What are you saying? What should we do? Well, we only want you to use the word. And they step back and say, that alone isn't really going to help.
Yeah. But meanwhile, there are 10,000 protesters who would say
video.
Very clearly, no, those guys are jerks. I don't like them. Okay. And they're happy to say so. And there were plenty of people who were saying, look, I've been out protesting for days on end, weeks, months on end, and I think those guys are idiots. Okay, well, good. I'm glad that thank God there's people who say that just to reassure you that there are people who recognize that.
Right.
But then
just, the simpler ways. I hear you. Come to me with solutions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I don't mind. Yeah. There's also a level at which I say, and I think she knows this, that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez knows that this comes with the territory and you had to come to expect it at some point. It is frustrating and outraging, but there it is. And sorry that that eventually happens. You gain power, and then people say you're a sellout. It just happens. It's
just
not
happens.
Necessarily true. It just happens.
So here's another way that Super Tuesday makes
smart.
for a
she
pivot.
Knows this.
She is very smart. Here's a way that Super Tuesday makes for a pivot. Biden will be at the State of the Union. It's now becoming the general election campaign.
Okay.
The surrogates for Trump are already, like Elaine Stefanik and other toadies, are already out there saying, of course we're going to vote for Trump. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And the answer is obviously we were better off 4 years ago. The thing is, 4 years ago on this date,
specifically,
COVID exploded.
Yeah.
Brian Metzger writes, reporter, 4 years ago today, I was hastily booking flights home because classes are going online. I didn't know what would happen next. It'd be really interesting to see if Republicans keep doing the are you better off today than 4 years ago thing as we move deeper into March when things started to shut down. And then people started to die. And so, maybe what the Biden administration needs to do is a daily 4 years ago today, this is what was going on.
That was just recently suggested.
Yeah.
Good idea.
I think it's a very good idea, selectively, of course. But 4 years ago today, here's how it's going. 4 years ago today, Trump told you to inject yourself with disinfectant.
Yeah.
He didn't say bleach. He said disinfectant.
Oh, okay.
And also very bright, strong lights.
Yes, and I'm not certain how you were going to get that inside, but he's probably got some ideas. Yeah, specific reminders of what happened 4 years ago. I did see somebody say that, and somebody
bring
said
up the lady with the scarves who was telling you how things were going to happen.
Right.
Bring up the CDC ineffective testing kits. Bring up all of that daily. Bring up the cruise ships that Trump wanted to keep outside of the country.
Yeah.
Because he was afraid if they came here, it would up the numbers.
Right.
Bring up the fact that 4 years ago today, Trump said, look, this is nothing. There's only like 27 people that died. That's it.
Yeah. Soon it'll be down to zero. It is, of course, 115 million. But, things like that, slow down the testing, bring up that
you can't do that until it's a general election. But now I know they're going to do it. I hear Elaine Stefanik say, are you better off than 4 years ago? Well, fine. Let's do that comparison.
Yeah.
Game on.
All right. If you're better off 4 years ago when there was no toilet paper to be had, like Soviet Union style problems.
Yeah, we had no toilet paper. How could I throw toilet paper at Puerto Ricans?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That was a luxury you didn't know at the time. But signs up in the supermarket, like 1 package of meat per family limit, and canned goods that were gone, yeast that was gone from the shelves for a year. Oh, yeah.
And by the way, if you are Puerto Rican, remember when instead of helping you after the hurricane, I just threw paper towels at you and said, clean up yourself?
Right. And by the way, ask that question in Puerto Rico. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? No, nothing's changed. Literally for them in many cases, the electricity situation is exactly the same. And now there you may say, well, he hasn't been president for much of those 4 years either. But he certainly set the tone and set them back 100 years by not getting on those repairs seriously when he was president, because he doesn't care and he forgets that they even are Americans. And if he had his druthers, I'm sure he'd cut them out of the map with the Sharpie too.
Listener and friend of the show, the Mighty OCD, posts on Blue Sky that there's an account doing just what you guys are talking about called 4 years ago today.
I guess good. I saw the idea kicked around by a couple of people yesterday, and then I saw Chris Hayes said, you know what, he had a meeting yesterday after seeing it, talked about on Blue Sky, and said, I'm going to get producers on making that happen for my show.
Good.
So,
good idea.
Good. It was an excellent idea. I think probably
Fox needs to do
it. There's a million people that I think have discussed the idea. I saw it, mentioned. I don't have it handy.
4 years ago today, hosted by Nikkki Haley.
Yeah. It absolutely should be a daily reminder, and the dumb things and, clips from how he handled things and the incredibly outrageously stupid things that he said, culminating, eventually, I think, with still the moment that demarks everything for me, that he himself got COVID And after telling everybody else it wasn't a big deal and you should treat it with horse paste, and then he immediately went to the hospital and had like regular, real medical doctors treat him with experimental treatments, but nonetheless ones that had the support of the medical community, and he lived. And then he came home and videoed himself on the White House lawn promising, this is October, right before the election, October 2020, promising the big voting block of seniors, I am going to protect you. I'm going to deploy the military to bring you the miracle drugs that I got for free. Every senior in America is going to get this delivered to them by the military. And then he actually went home and took a nap and did nothing.
Right.
After promising to save their lives.
This is AP
in exchange
News.
for votes.
Remember, the election is November.
Oh, yes, right.
Okay.
I remember that.
October 2nd.
Yeah.
Trump, stricken by COVID, flown to military hospital.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So this year, October 2nd, 2024, Joe Biden should sit in front of the microphone and cameras and say, so I asked Donald Trump,
yeah,
are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?
You could hardly breathe. And you were flown immediately to the hospital. And yeah, I mean, I've said it 100 times. If the doctors had only known the trolley problem on this one, it was very difficult at the time. You know, you're faced with, you got a patient, you do no harm.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
Right.
Not much of a trolley problem.
Right. But
make the trolley better.
Yeah, you sit back in the end and say, wow, you know, I will imagine
you treat
this.
The trolley.
You have to do that. Yeah. Right.
If the trolley goes on to another track that you didn't, well, that's too bad. You're a doctor. Yeah. You treat the trolley.
Right. However, yeah, in only in the philosophical sense in which you would consider such a thing, you do have to wonder, like the fact that he recovered from this illness only to come back and say, I'm going to make everybody else get it and have it worse. Like, oh, wow, I didn't really realize that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you ask a pediatrician, what do you do with baby Hitler if you could go back in time? The answer is you give him a well baby visit and his vaccines.
That's the actual answer for doctors. Philosophers get to ask different questions.
Philosophers get to decide otherwise, but that's just not how it works for doctors.
Yeah.
So
it's just an amazing thing. But yeah, especially for him, 4 years ago today, 4 years ago that day, wow.
And you don't even have to wait till October. I mean, you can start saying it now. Are you better off? 4 years ago, Donald Trump was in the hospital with COVID, and the rest of his, COVID policy wasn't much better.
Right.
What are you talking about?
And he used the opportunity to promise you that he was going to make it all better, and then 100 million of the rest of you actually got the disease. So how did he do?
So other things that will come out of the State of the Union, Speaker Johnson is putting together half of the government funding stuff, and that appears to be on track. And then the other half will come a little bit later. But here's a piece by Steve Bannon on MSNBC. Why Speaker Johnson boasted about GOP cuts to law enforcement. The party that grew hysterical in response to defund the police rhetoric is now trying to score points by cutting funds for law enforcement. Bannon's point is the entire pitch is based on weird conspiracy theories. Like the Justice Department, the FBI, and the IRS have been turned against the American people. So IRS is part of law enforcement. You know, they go and enforce the law on billionaires. And we have to cut that back. We have to strip funding.
Yeah, sure. All predicted in the 1980s by the one-hit wonder Cameo recording. I wonder who's watching me now. Right. The IRS? I need to get that as the soundtrack.
Chuck Grassley.
Oh.
Chuck Grassley says yesterday, welcome to President Biden's America, where the federal government chooses energy dependence over energy dominance and independence. Sure. And that was on Twitter, and I love this part. Readers add context. Contrary to the senator's claim, oil production is at an all-time high in the U.S., hitting a record 13.3 million barrels a day in November 2023. For comparison, the average daily production in 2017 was 9.
Trump.
Well, the average in 2023 was 13.
Okay. Well, I don't love the fact that we're producing so much oil or anything, but I mean, that's sort of a basic fact thing. And also, there's just never going to be energy dominance.
Well,
by the US.
The point there isn't so much the energy dominance. What you have to remember about Chuck Grassley is he's lying.
Oh,
and he's not just lying about this. They lie about everything.
Yeah.
Here's another 17 examples.
Mm-hmm. And he does it with a little texting.
And the thing about Grassley, which is why you always pick on him, is he does his own tweets and everybody knows it. In other offices, they have staff do it, and then you can fire the intern. You can't do that with Grassley. No. This is him.
You can fire him. There is that. All right. Well, he too, a terrible person. And we're always having to have him explain what the hell he had. What were you saying? No one can understand you.
Right.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's news. Oh, we didn't get to
Mark Robinson, the Republican nominee for North Carolina governor.
We can handle that, though.
The New York Times says, Mr. Robinson formally entered politics in 2019 when he began his run for lieutenant governor. He's since earned a reputation as a fiery outsider eager to dive into the culture war. And Will Bunch says, there needs to be a New York Times headline generator where you plug in terms like Holocaust denier and it spits back phrases like fiery outsider eager to dive into the culture war.
Yeah.
He's also said things like, I want to go back to when women couldn't vote. A lot of the statements that he makes when you look at the entire context of what he said isn't quite as bad as it sounds, but it's still pretty bad.
Okay. Well,
right. I want to go back to when women couldn't vote, because in those days Republicans were good and they were the ones who were working to try to make sure that changed, is essentially what he was trying to say. But then they pulled the quote out, and I look at it and said, stop apologizing for it. That's going to be used in ads all over, repetition. You can tut-tut about it, that it's not pure. This is politics.
Yeah, well, there is that. He didn't have to set it up that way. Why couldn't he just say, I'd like to go back to when the Republicans were good? Okay.
And he said a whole bunch of stuff, which isn't so great either.
Yeah, well, that's true. All right, well, we have some roundups of that. But thanks, Greg. We'll see you next week. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. We got lots to cover here, and boy, oh boy, well, what else have we decided to cover that we can bring? We can double back on the North Carolina thing, because this guy is no good. He's crazy. We don't want to have him around, and he's not the only one either. North Carolina has some problems, and we might as well highlight it. And let's see. One of the things that I have here, can I get to the original on this? It is from Talking Points Memo. And it was recommended to me via social media. It is not a brand new current article. It is a year old. Why do I have it? And the answer is, well, why read the stupid hedge your words coverage from the New York Times that Greg was telling us about, and saying, well, he's eager to dive into the culture war. What does it really mean here? And somebody said, well, you do much better reading this year-old profile for a number of reasons from TPM, not the least of which is TPM tends not to pull its punches like that, but also to highlight the fact that TPM knew a year ago, as people in North Carolina did because they were living with him as lieutenant governor, that they had this problem, and in particular that he had this problem. And it's an interesting phenomenon. Now I'm going to sort of, to go out on a limb here, I'm wondering, like, whether there's a story to be generated here or whether it would be a bad idea to tread on this ground. But comparing his track record of being more than an outspoken conservative, but it's a weird thing. Like North Carolina, all right, during yesterday's discussions of this situation of his candidacy, and I think it was Mighty OCD who made this comment too. Like, look, Republicans are not going to elect a black governor of North Carolina. They're not. I don't know whether they will or they won't, but I mean, you'd think, well, they've elected him lieutenant governor. Have they? I don't know. All states don't do their lieutenant governor thing the same way. But of course, electing somebody lieutenant governor, electing a black candidate lieutenant governor as a Republican is an exercise that even MAGA wackadoodle racists will occasionally indulge in, because it gives you the opportunity to look like you're going to stick it in the eye of the liberals and own the liberals and stick it to the Democrats. See, we are not racist. We elected him lieutenant governor. Does that mean you're going to, like every other lieutenant governor, eventually elevate them to governor? What? No. Maybe. But there's this weird exercise that they like to go through in which if you can get a black candidate to be a wild, big-mouthed culture warrior for your side, that's awesome. Meanwhile, of course, somebody like totally mainstream who happens to be black, every time they raise an issue you disagree with them about, they're too mouthy. They should stop with the black sass, right? And go back to the old days, like this guy actually advocates. When you could tell people to, black people in particular, shut the hell up, and nobody would protest. But anyway, I'm wondering also whether there's a similar phenomenon here in Virginia with Winsome Sears as lieutenant governor, where there's a thing going on where it gives MAGA types a particular thrill to hand a position of some note, if not necessarily responsibility, to black conservatives, but particularly black conservatives who will be extraordinarily irritating to white liberals, or any liberals for that matter. And I wonder if that's, here we go. I mean, essentially what we're getting at here is that Mighty OCD is saying, look, the GOP is fine pretending to have a black friend as long as they're a lieutenant governor, but not a black boss, i.e. the governor, right? And that may be a real thing here, but that there's an extra layer at which they take specific, they have some specific glee that they extract from doing it in this way and being able to say, well, we're the ones who are electing black people to statewide office. You are not. Yeah, well, so long as they are in service to your agenda, yes, of course that would be true of white people running for that office too. But then this is a disguise. I don't know. Seems to me that there's something to it here, and they really, really enjoy doing that, but then almost never are willing to hand the power over to that very same candidate. For some reason, there's something preventing them from rising to the top job. Of course, well, I guess in the wake of Barack Obama having held the presidency, it's of less force to say, well, you might end up saying the same thing about Kamala Harris if in fact Democratic voters don't elevate her to a nomination for the presidency next time around. Why is that? Why would that have happened if the tradition generally still is to elevate the vice president to, well, it didn't happen for Mike Pence either, and he's pretty white. But anyway, you get the idea. It's something to keep an eye on. Something better to keep an eye on would be organized thoughts gathered ahead of time about the lieutenant governor of North Carolina, Mark Robinson. And as I was saying, TPM has done that. And they did it better than the New York Times did it, even though they just did it. But a year ago, TPM had the news. North Carolina's lieutenant governor is a Facebook brawler whose posts railed against gays, blacks, and Jews, because you can't leave the Jews out of anything. That's a headline. It fit, as opposed to he's what was it? Willing culture warrior, loves to dive into culture wars. What do you mean by that? You can just say that they rail against gays, blacks, and Jews. Everybody understands that. Fine. So it's not like it can't be done in a headline. It's illustrated with a photo collage of some kind that's meant to, it really does carry the point. I don't know where they get this screen grab, this picture of Robinson laughing and pointing into the camera as though he's about to hit the enter button on a particularly trollish tweet. But it works very well, along with screen grabs of Mark Robinson tweets. Let's see. I'm sure that they discussed the content of those tweets in the body of the articles rather than reading them now. So this is, all right. So again, Hunter Walker, a year ago. Are you better off now, or are you better off a year ago when you first learned about Mark Robinson from Hunter Walker at TPM? Earlier this month, that is to say a year ago, North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson delivered a pair of speeches that sparked speculation he might be running for governor next year. You know what else sparked speculation they might be running for governor? He's lieutenant governor. Anyway, however, his remarks online are far more notable than any comments he's made in his official capacity. Robinson, elected in 2020, likes to post on Facebook a lot. His years of comments on the site include extreme attacks on the LGBT community, immigrants, Jews, and black people. So there you go. He's being fair, say the white people who support him. Robinson has also expressed support for the rioters who stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, whom he dubbed political prisoners. He has shared posts suggesting shadowy, satanic, and occult forces are plaguing society, along with multiple conspiracy theories about the New World Order. In many of his posts, Robinson made clear that he enjoyed offending those who disagreed with his extreme views. Enjoying offending people, not a great trait for governance, but what they're saying essentially here is he's like 100% in the murdery traitor green mold, although I don't know that one came before the other, and I don't know which one's the chicken and which one's the egg. It's just the same kind of mold. Slime mold, as a matter of fact. Anyway, note to liberals, one of his comments is, "I'll accept gay pride when you accept white pride," Robinson wrote in a 2014 post. And I don't know what he means by that because, well, gee whiz. I don't know. The North Carolina Republicans must be loving it. They got a black guy to say white pride is a good thing. I don't know why, but they are rewarding him with a very nice and prestigious job and listening to him and nominating him to run for the governorship. So I don't see any reason why he would stop anytime soon. Since taking office in 2021, Robinson has made headlines with his prolific Facebook output, including last year, that would be 2022, when he shared baseless conspiracy theories about the attack on former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband. Of course, he would join in that. In 2021, Robinson sparked outrage from Jewish groups when he published a post filled with Yiddish slurs and references to Israeli currency, wherein he declared the Black Panther superhero movie was based on a character that was created by an agnostic Jew and put to film by a satanic Marxist in an effort to, quote, pull the shekels out of your Schwarze pockets. That's what we were told he had said yesterday. So Greg had mentioned that one. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know what difference would it make to anyone ever anywhere if the person who made the Black Panther movie was agnostic. But I don't know. Apparently that's a thing that you now say. If you're into evangelical wackadoodleism, I guess you would. That's a bad thing. He's agnostic. That can't be good. I am evangelical. Well, anyway, those comments that drew attention are not Robinson's only controversial take on Jewish issues. Oh no. Over the years, Robinson repeatedly questioned why criticism of Nazis was such a prominent part of political discourse. That doesn't really necessarily have to do with Jews per se. Nazis were an enemy of the United States of America as a whole for a large portion of the 1940s and 30s era. But we declared war on them. That was kind of a big deal and sort of unified the country. But anyway, Never mind all of that. Why is criticism of Nazis such a prominent part of political discourse? He argued that Nazism was defeated in World War II, while the continued spread of communism was a more pressing problem. That's an interesting thing. And yet they came back. And he supports them, which is weird. On one of these posts, which has not been reported before, but now has been reported a year ago, since we're reading an old article, Robinson seemed to veer into Holocaust denial. Sure, why not? There is a reason, all caps, reason the liberal media fills the airwaves with programs about the Nazi, all caps, and I guess it should be, it is an abbreviation, Nazi and the, quote, 6 million Jews, unquote, they murdered, wrote Robinson. There is also a, all caps, reason those same liberals, all caps, do not fill the airwaves with programs about the communist, that one communist, and the 100 plus million, all caps, people they murdered throughout the 20th century. And it's interesting, too. Well, we defeated the Nazis in World War II, so we shouldn't be talking about them. They're gone. Well, we defeated the communists at the end of the Cold War. They're gone. No, they came back. Yeah, well, so did Nazis. So what's your problem? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Shut up, you agnostic Jew. I don't know. Anyway, a devout Christian who is an outspoken pro-lifer, Robinson also wrote a post in 2012 admitting he once paid for an abortion. It, too, later received attention from the press, but there's so much more. With speculation mounting that he might run for governor. We now know that that's the case, and that he will win the nomination. TPM reviewed 7 years of Robinson's publicly viewable Facebook posts. Many hundreds of messages, which stretch back over a decade, are shocking and include numerous statements that go well beyond anything that has previously been reported. Now it's been reported for a year, but they nominated him anyway. Robinson and his office did not respond to multiple requests for comment. For this story, we are publishing Robinson's own words in as close to their original format as possible, including typos, non-standard punctuation, and capitalization, because some of that is code, too, and you should probably include it. So anyway, really, this is a better roundup that actually looks at his clear offenses in a way that the New York Times did not, would not, will not, presumably. Maybe in the year to come. I don't know. But more to the point, this was all, because it was reported last year, this was on the public record when Republicans decided to nominate him for governor. That's the real point of this. What's up first? A filthy abomination. Gay people are a particular focus for Robinson. He summed up his views on the matter in a 2014 post saying, I believe that homosexuality is a sin and that those people who are proudly coming out of the closet are standing in open rebellion against God. And then lots of wacko punctuation, I guess. It's supposed to be an ellipsis, but it's like 15 periods long. And then all caps. And I don't care who knows it or likes it, Robinson wrote, except now. Now he does care. I mean, he's going to say it anyway. It's not going to stop him, but he'll care when he's not governor. But okay. And here's the tweet embedded for evidentiary purposes. Now, in another post, a message posted within a week of the June 2016 mass shooting at Pulse, a gay nightclub in Florida, where 49 people were killed by a gunman, Robinson stressed that he would not be willing to share images of the rainbow pride flag, which were a popular sign of support following the tragedy. And it's quoted here. Okay, here it is, and may make some folks mad, but oh well. First, let me say that I pray for the souls of all those killed, healing for all those wounded, and comfort for the family members of the terrorist shooting in Orlando. Not family members of the terrorist who did the shooting, but the victims of the terrorist shooting, I'm sure he means. Even I'll give him that one. Before adding, however, homosexuality is still an abominable sin, and I will not join in, quote, celebrating gay pride, nor will I fly their sacrilegious flag on my page. Sorry if this offends anyone. No, he's not. Of course not. In other missives over the years, Robinson called same-sex relationships a sin, a mass delusion, all caps, filthy abomination, satanic cult of sexual perversion. He made multiple posts expressing anger at the gay pride flag. The rainbow is the beautiful symbol of God's promise to man. It is not the symbol of sickening homosexual perversion! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. He wrote in 2013. Robinson also repeatedly raged at the trans community. Obviously, that's going to come up too. 2015, as Caitlyn Jenner's transition made headlines, Robinson wrote that it was proof the devil has a plan. Not really, but okay. The next year, he wrote a brief post styled as a letter. Dear transgender crowd, you cannot sin God's creation. Sincerely, a Bible thumper. All right. Even men who wore jewelry drew Robinson's ire. Nothing is more disgusting to me than effeminate males who carry purses and have earrings in their ears. Hashtag stomach-turning madness. Okay, look out for the earrings and jewelry and necklaces. I'm sure that's really not a problem. Anyway, in multiple posts, Robinson suggested he had used, or very much wanted to use, an anti-gay slur. On May 23, 2017, Robinson suggested he was annoyed that efforts to post the slur would be removed from Facebook. So apparently using the British word for cigarettes violates Facebook's community standards, he wrote. LOLOL. I love when people type out all LOLOL rather than just write ha 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 ha. I mean, what? Okay, if you're going to type that many, like if you're going to type ha 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 ha, at least LOL is shorter. Lots of LOLs, I don't think that makes any sense. But anyway, the following month, Robinson was once again chafing at efforts to censor the slur. Why does Facebook think it's okay to insult God by using his rainbow as a symbol of perversion, but doesn't think it's okay to insult homosexuals by calling them... and he begins the word F-A. Oops, better watch myself. Anyway, the point really isn't that he so much, we all know. So the point isn't so much, oh my gosh, he hates gay people. It's that he's one of those buffoonish trolls who loves to do stuff to annoy people and then say, sorry if you're offended. It's just not a responsible person's approach to anything. So there you go. And plenty of other examples of him, doing stuff like, I didn't say the word, so this is like, now great. Your nominee for governor is, stop hitting yourself, guy. Or I'm not on your side of the car. I was just stretching. Or the annoying sibling who just can't help themselves and won't stop teasing people. Is going to govern? I don't think so. Well, there's more. A decade of extremely online anger. Robinson's Facebook over. Is that, what are we talking about here in French? It's extensive. Anyway, stupid French. The words, I mean. He often posted on the site multiple times in the same day. Robinson's posts ranged from trash talking about sports to posting photos of nostalgic toys. Politics, however, was clearly his passion. For over a decade, he weighed in on all the micro news cycles and outrages that dominated the conservative airways, because it's living rent-free in his head when there's supposed to be room for governance. Anyway, this from Barack Obama's tan suit to Benghazi, the national anthem protests in the NFL to pop culture flare-ups to the endless stream of controversies during the administration of President Trump. During public debates around the Confederate flag and monuments, Robinson continuously expressed frustration with the removal of Confederate symbols and posted the flag on his page. That seems odd. Robinson's library of posts is like a roadmap through the modern conservative radicalization cycle with a mixture of old-time religion, conservative punditry, digital misinformation, and addictive level of engagement combining to produce a near constant stream of invective. As Robinson posted through the events of the past few years, he went from Trump skeptic to Trump supporter to standing and posing next to Trump at a rally. Robinson's first 4 years of posts earned little engagement. As Trump took office, he seemed to be building a following and began posting homemade images that he stamped with the phrase M. Robinson memes. In other words, he found a way to cash in, and he appreciated that, and that just built into more loyalty. He also increasingly embraced conspiratorial ideas. On multiple occasions, Robinson posted about the globalist agenda, and he believed that it was being enacted by the socialist/communist agents and their globalist masters. Robinson saw this hidden plot everywhere, including as he tried to watch sports on ESPN, which he believed featured leftist New World Order globalists. The term globalist, of course, has anti-Semitic roots. It's often used in conjunction with conspiracy theories about the Jewish financier George Soros, which advocacy groups have criticized as also being steeped in anti-Semitism. Over the years, Robinson posted repeatedly about Soros, including describing him as having grand schemes and evil visions aimed at trying to destroy our nation. At points, Robinson's anti-gay posts also parroted claims that would go on to form the core of QAnon and groomer conspiracy theories, which baselessly tie LGBT people to child abuse and trafficking networks. You get the idea. There's next section is a politics born from social media. Robinson's ideology is very much a product of right-wing internet. His political career was also essentially born online. Robinson first ran for office after a pro-gun speech he gave at a city council meeting in 2018 that went viral. His public speaking has also included extremism that has made headlines, even though it seems to appeal to Republicans in his home state. Even though it seems to appeal, well, of course. Anyway, however, the rhetoric in even his fiercest live remarks pales in comparison to what he can be found in his massive Facebook archive. In particular, the black community has been a major target for Robinson, in case you were thinking it would be a good idea to elect him. In various posts over the years, he referred to black people as, quote, muddle-headed Negroes, apes, and a monkey. Well, that does seem odd, doesn't it? February is Black History Month. I guess the shortest month of the year is all we need to learn about the separate but equal history of a people who have achieved so little, Robinson wrote in 2014. Wow. He also took issue with Kwanzaa, a holiday that celebrates African American heritage. Random thought, after Christmas edition, Robinson wrote in early January 2018, Kwanzaa is Hanukkah on food stamps. Probably not a real random thought, but okay. In one of the two speeches that sparked campaign buzz, which he delivered earlier this month, that's a year ago, Robinson touted his status as the first black lieutenant governor of North Carolina. That's a quote, but it's also maybe true. However, on Facebook, Robinson indicated several times that he often doesn't exactly see himself as part of that community. Someone asked me if I considered myself part of the African American community. I told them no, Robinson wrote in 2017. They asked me why, and I said, why would I want to be a part of a community that devalues its fathers, overburdens its mothers, and murders its children by the millions? Why would I want to be a part of the community that sucks from the putrid tit, yikes, of the government and then complains about getting sour milk? I don't know. But anyway, it goes on at some length. There's more, there's worse. I don't know what to tell you. He's a wackadoodle, and it's extensively documented here. I am about done with spending time on it. He's an internet troll, and he's been nominated as the Republican candidate for governor. So I find that strange, and you might too. And over the next couple of months, you'll find it stranger still as more people focus on what they've found in looking through his extensive online archive. Okay, there are a couple of other things that I thought I might share with you, and we'll have to take a break before we do. We don't have to. We're going to. And then we'll get to a couple other weird and otherwise strange esoteric news stories. Oh, including Well, this one I can squeeze in, I guess, the entire substance of the story because I don't have the lengthier write-up about it. But the Supreme Court has put out its schedule for the month of April, and so now we know when they will be hearing the Trump immunity case. Now that we know that they're going to do it and that it's going to entail some delays in the trial. As it turns out, they scheduled it. They said they were going to schedule it for the week of April 22nd, and they did, but just of some note, they scheduled it for the end of that week, April 25th. In other words, the last day possible for them to hear it before the end of their term. So technically they're shoehorning it into this term, but only on the latest date possible. Figures. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Before we go any further, I just wanted to remind you that I did say that North Carolina has other problems as well, and you should take note. And if you live in North Carolina, you probably already know. If you live in North Carolina and you don't know, well, then good. We'll do you a service and let you know so that you can vote appropriately, though you were probably going to anyway. And if you don't live in North Carolina and you just want to shake your fist at North Carolina, now you will be able to do so with even greater gusto, though this problem is not by any means limited to North Carolina. It just happens to be a thematic entry here. From WRAL News comes the following report filed just the other day on the 5th. Far-right challenger defeats, well, all comers for the nomination for governor, but also defeats North Carolina School Superintendent Truitt in the GOP primary. A far-right candidate who was, how far right? At the U.S. Capitol during January 6th, 2021 attack, has defeated the incumbent North Carolina School Superintendent, Catherine Truitt. So, how do you like that? Well, you shouldn't. A far-right candidate who has called public schools, public schools, that's the entity we were referring to, not just public schools. That was an odd one. A far-right candidate who has called public schools indoctrination centers. Again, another one of these internet trolls who just loves being provocative and stupid. Indoctrination centers has urged people not to send their children to them and attended the rally outside the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, has defeated the incumbent Tuesday in the GOP primary to run the state's public schools. Michelle Morrow defeated incumbent superintendent of public instruction Catherine Truitt, who I'm sure was no great shakes anyway, with 98% of the precincts reporting. Morrow had 52.1% of the vote compared to 47.9% for Truitt. The winner will likely face Democrat Maurice Mo Green, not the one from the Godfather movies, but a former superintendent of Guilford County Schools in November. Green had 66% of the votes compared to 24.8% for C.R. Katie Eddings and 9.2% for Kenan Crumble. The Morrow's victory on Tuesday is a staggering defeat for Truitt. Well, all defeats are, really. Who has guided the state through post-pandemic learning recovery and worked to change reading instruction in schools to be more research-based and has pushed for better preparing students for the workforce, college, or military. Morrow is a homeschool mom, great for public instruction, right? Who believes schools have become too political. Morrow has been backed by rural politicians and has stayed competitive despite a massive disparity in funding and Truitt's establishment support. Truitt's campaign has raised more than $150,000 since 2023, several times at roughly $8,000 Morrow's campaign has raised. Truitt also counted the endorsement of prominent Republican leaders across North Carolina, including state Senate and House leaders. The General Assembly dictates education funding and most education policy, and lawmakers have been active on K-12 issues. Truitt has considered herself aligned with lawmakers on most education issues, supporting the bill known as the Parents' Bill of Rights, and supporting research-based changes to reading instruction. That sounds all right. Although, who knows what's really behind it. Morrow has accused Truitt of not being conservative enough. That's the policy difference she has with her. You're not conservative enough. She criticized Truitt for asking lawmakers to delay the Parents' Bill of Rights implementation, which Truitt did, and lawmakers approved after school systems said they needed more time to craft compliant policies. She also criticized Truitt for audits that found improper documentation of federal pandemic relief dollars. Not that she would have given any of those dollars to the schools, but anyway, that's the criticism. Morrow says, I can't believe you delayed implementation of the Parents' Bill of Rights. Well, I said, let's do this responsibly and give everybody enough time to adequately adapt to the new reality. And your position was, no adequate anything. Do it all on the fly. Who cares whether it's done properly or not, or causes a problem, or costs our system millions of dollars in lawsuits later on. Good job. Morrow has 5 children, the youngest of whom is enrolled in a North Carolina homeschool co-op. Her children have not attended North Carolina public schools, but some attended public school when the family lived in Texas and Colorado. A Cary resident who lost the 2022 campaign for a Wake County School Board seat has called schools socialism centers and indoctrination centers and urged people not to send their children to them. In 2022, she apologized for anti-Islamic social media posts. Wow, what a surprise. Including calling Islam evil. Morrow attended the January 6th rally at the Capitol with her oldest children, who I guess learned nothing from homeschooling. And she said she was there to teach her children a lesson about citizens' role in a democracy. Not doing great on the civics. She did not go inside the Capitol. She's pushed numerous conspiracy theories on COVID-19 vaccines and the 2020 presidential election and called for taking out her enemies. Green, who is also a Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools deputy superintendent and chief operating officer, has spent most of his life in North Carolina, where his children did attend the public schools. He believes it's essential to revere public school employees, tailor services to student needs, engage parents and community members in schools, ensure a safe learning environment, and remind people of the good things that are happening in schools. He wants to make character development a part of students' education. Green wants to urge the General Assembly to provide more funding for schools, but he said he has experience aligning existing resources with top priorities, i.e. somebody who knows, how to govern, versus an internet troll who never sent their kids to school anyway, and so not only has no stake in it, but has no experience with what it's like to be in a public school. Kind of an important thing. But not to the Republicans. They want Karen in charge. So that's what they got across the board. Good job, North Carolina Republicans. Now, why do they keep doing this stuff when they must know at some point they are likely to lose when they nominate wackadoodles? Well, there's an explanation being offered, and Amanda Marcotte is the one explaining it. So what's going on? What's her take on all this? Well, she's got a piece in Salon that runs under the headline of Nikkki Haley never had a chance. We knew that. As Republicans' bonkers candidates for North Carolina governor shows. Well, add this school superintendent to the mix. I don't know if she makes an appearance in this piece or not, but she certainly could. Now you know that. Haley warned that Trump is chaos, the subheader reads, but Hitler quoting Mark Robinson proves MAGA prefers chaos to winning elections. And, just so long as they don't, I guess that'd be good. But I'm tired of the chaos as well, as we all are. Wednesday morning, former South Carolina Governor Nikkki Haley did everyone a solid by being brief in her remarks as she dropped out of the Republican presidential primary race. She declined to endorse Donald Trump, yet anyway, who beat her handily once again on Super Tuesday, but did suggest that Trump could, quote, earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him, unquote. Not that he's ever earned anything ever, so, I doubt that's going to happen, but she'll happily, in the end, grant them for free anyway. The conciliatory tone was no surprise. A common gripe against Haley is that she started criticizing Trump directly far too late in the race, and only half-heartedly at that, I'm sure. For most of 2023, Haley avoided calling Trump out for his deranged behavior, only making half-hearted, there it is, assertions that she was a steadier hand. After he gave a speech where he at length confused Haley for former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, she finally uncorked a little. She started offering more full-throated denunciations of the chaos Trump brings. Implicit was an electability argument. Her more reasonable appearing demeanor meant she had a much better chance at defeating President Joe Biden in November. Many a pundit argued this pitch would have worked on Republican voters if she had only started making it sooner. Yeah, I don't think so, and I don't think either does Amanda. The big problem with this argument is that it assumes that winning elections is a major priority for MAGA voters. And I don't know whether she's headed in this direction, but I'll throw something in just that I've been thinking about. If you have reached the point where you are forging electoral college vote certificates, I don't know that winning the election is that important to you. I don't know that the election means anything to you. It would do this. It would be great cover. If you actually did win the election, great. Then I don't have to do any of these other stupid things to seize power and justify it. But actually, who cares? Because we're going to seize power regardless. We forged electoral college votes. Come on. It's pretty clear that the election results don't mean anything to us. So, to the extent that nominating internet trolls rallies our troops and makes them that much more likely to show up in a violent capacity as necessary, great. Do that. But you'll lose the election. Who cares? I'm not really standing for election. I'm simply announcing the coup, and this is the sign-up sheet. And if I don't give people red meat, fewer people will sign up and bring their guns. That's why we're doing things this way. I don't know if she goes all the way there, but that's what I'm talking about. And it's come up in the weird context that I mused about the other day, right? Like I was just, what would be more hilariously infuriating, I guess, really, for owning the libs, I guess, than bankrupt-ass Donald Trump being fined into oblivion saying, I'm going to accept federal matching funds for my race this time around. And now everybody says, well, he'd never do that because, it comes with all sorts of restrictions. Well, who cares? I'm not going to obey the law. I just want them to give me the money. And then I'll break the law. And they'll be like, well, we're going to fine you, and we might even bring you up on charges after the election or something like that. Yeah, well, after the election, I'm going to be in power, whether I win it or not. I'll pardon myself, and I'll arrest you for trying to enforce it. Does that make a difference? And what are we going to do? Are we going to send him the federal money and say, I hope this works out, or what? I don't know. Which is what would make, it seemed, if I'm Stephen Miller, I'd be sending him memos about this. Make the federal government fund a significant portion of the campaign to overthrow it. Yes, I would. Why shouldn't I be doing that? Again, all the reasons for not taking federal matching funds that have been true since 2012 and they fell out of favor with everybody. Who cares if that the reason? Well, then you have to. At least I'll be free from all of the restrictions that come with it. Well, you'll be free from those restrictions because you don't care about the law. Oh, that does sort of change the game, doesn't it? Well, don't give him any ideas. He's got those ideas. There's money to be stolen. He already has that idea. Anyway, back to what Amanda was saying. The big problem with the argument that, if only she had started criticizing Trump sooner, is that it assumes that winning elections is a major priority for MAGA voters. I think she's basically saying, we don't care even if we stay out of power. We just want to troll people. That's what we like best. But I will add, if you also could just magically give us the power afterwards, even after losing the election, I guess we'd take it. Trump's chaos, though, is what MAGA craves. I add the word though there. And it's far more important to them than winning elections, just to bring it back to her theme here. One has to look no further than Haley's neighboring state of North Carolina to show how much MAGA prioritizes fascist buffoonery over effective politics. Although, again, I remind you, it's pretty effective politics to seize power. If you succeed, anyway. So where were we? There, of course, in North Carolina is where Republicans nominated Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson as their nominee for governor, despite the fact, or maybe because of it, as others would argue, that Robinson calls gay people maggots, but he calls them maggots because he knows that he's just teasing Facebook, that if he starts that word with a different letter, they'll block him, which they should, but he loves to dare them to do, and he loves the fact that you know what he's trying to do. And he posted, seemingly approvingly, a quote from Adolf Hitler on his Facebook page. Robinson has denied that he was praising Hitler, but since it was echoing a common far-right refrain that it's not racist to be proud of your own race, people are rightfully skeptical of his denials. Except for white Christian men, there doesn't appear to be a group that Robinson hasn't heaped hate upon. He's called for the arrest of trans people. He's accused women who get abortions of murder. At a 2020 event before the Republican women of Pitt County, he declared, "I absolutely want to go back to the America where women couldn't vote." He has demanded that women be led by men. He has called school shooting survivors prostitutes. That's just how, trollish he really is. That's the best example, I think. He endorses pretty much every conspiracy theory, but especially ones that are really racist against black people. Barack Obama is a Marxist who faked his birth certificate, for instance. Beyonce is satanic, and police shootings are a media hoax. He complained that Black Panther was, you heard this one earlier, created by an agnostic Jew to put to film by satanic Marxist, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean, and whoever that is supposed to be. He's implied the Holocaust was faked. There's just so much hate that it's numbing to list it all. In fact, I declined to even read all the way through it before. It's just boring at some level. Just as telling may be what Trump said when he endorsed Robinson. He declared that Robinson is, quote, Martin Luther King on steroids. And better than Martin Luther King. How do you like that? Trump, who enjoys dunking on people who publicly support him, sneered that Robinson didn't like the comparison. I wasn't sure he was angry because that's a terrible thing to say, or was he complimented? Robinson's displeasure was no doubt due in part to his hatred for the former civil rights leader, whom he calls a communist. In part, it's likely because he recognized Trump wasn't complimenting him at all. The comparison was intended to insult King. It's part of it was intended to insult King more than help him, I guess. I get you. It's part of a growing willingness on the MAGA right to trash King, such as Charlie Kirk at Turning Point USA, saying King was awful and not a good person. And wasn't he going to ruin his reputation like last week? Or, he announced some program that he was going to have completed by now, but I guess it didn't work. Trump deriding King really gets at the heart of what Haley doesn't get about MAGA voters. They aren't in this to make friends or build community. If they were, they wouldn't nominate someone like Robinson, who's bound to turn off swing voters. Instead, MAGA is a nihilistic movement focused on destruction. It's not even that they can argue against King's beliefs in any meaningful way. Attacking King is just about being as dickish as possible for its own sake. And I guess that sounds about right. Derek Thompson of The Atlantic recently wrote about the political science, explaining how many voters, especially those in the MAGA movement, want chaos for its own sake. The need for chaos emerges from the interplay among dominance-oriented traits, i.e., a preference for traditional social hierarchies, feelings of marginalization, and intense anger towards elites. He writes, "This is all scientific jargon for the anger arising when white men who are raised to believe that they are entitled to more privileges than everyone else see their unfair advantages challenged." One of the researchers Thompson interviewed compares it to someone playing a game that has always been rigged in their favor. When the rules become a little more fair, they start losing games. They could, of course, actually learn to play the game and get better at it, rather than simply expecting everyone else to let them cheat. Instead, as the researcher explained, in a rage, you turn the whole table upside down and the pieces scatter and shatter. They would rather destroy the game than play without unfair advantages. Or, as I often like to say, MAGA is a support group for mediocre white men. In her concession speech, Haley praised America as a land of opportunity and said, at its best, politics is about bringing people into your cause, not turning them away. In practice, Haley rarely lived up to her own rhetoric, but one can see why she says such things, as these inclusive sentiments appeal to most people. But for the burn it all down crowd that is MAGA, this is everything they reject. They don't want to bring people together. As Robinson's Fire Hose of Hate shows, the whole point of MAGA is to find self-esteem by denigrating everyone else. Nor do they love America, despite waving a bunch of flags around. In his victory speech, Trump described the United States as a third world country that's overrun with migrant crime and choking to death. He claimed that the U.S. is so terrible that, quote, the world is laughing at us and taking advantage of us. The relentless whining doesn't reflect reality, of course. In real America, crime is low, like real America as in the factual existing America, not real America in the, what's his name sense. I already forgotten and put him out of my mind. George Allen sense. Right here in Virginia too. And I still, thank God, I've already forgotten him. Anyway, in real America, crime is low, employment is high, and the world's respect was restored when Biden was elected. Though we could lose that respect again if Trump wins, bringing shame upon us once again. Trump is a liar, of course, but his lies resonate with his audience not because they feel the U.S. is losing, but because he speaks to their more personal fears of being unable to keep up in a society where the boot on the neck of women and minorities is ever so slowly being lifted. Projecting their own anxieties onto the country also creates the rationale for what they ultimately want, which is to tear down democracy to the ground and replace it with a MAGA dictatorship that will restore their unearned privileges by fiat. So, okay, we made it to the end of that one. Let's see. There were a couple of things that it reminded me of along the way, although maybe now it might be time to jump around a little bit more and get to a couple of other things. Which are of some interest. Let me see. I got some suggestions here. Things I parked from today's social media happenings. Some things, let's see, a few that I can see that probably make a better Friday inclusion more than anything else. And let's see. Oh, there's so many fun and interesting ones. Oh, some Michigan news. Okay, that too. A good idea, but maybe we save it for another date. Let's add this one, which is of some interest. Politico reporting this one. I don't know if I'm going to get all the way through it. Maybe that and an observation, an aside about it. Politico reports that, just adding to the heap of troubles and the slow march toward justice, I guess, which will eventually, or which eventually Donald Trump seeks to short circuit by giving himself the pardon power again. Arizona investigators issue grand jury subpoenas as state's 2020 Trump election probe accelerates. Hallelujah. Finally, people working towards bringing charges against the people who forged electoral college documents. I mean, should be the most, one of the most heinous crimes ever committed in the United States. It's just, I mean, I don't know what else to tell you about it. I don't know why we don't think of this as shocking on a daily basis, but I do, so you can follow along with me. It's a sign, says the subheader, that the state's attorney general is nearing a decision about whether to bring criminal charges, and gosh, we hope so. Betsy Woodruff Swan, Kyle Cheney reporting this for Politico. Arizona prosecutors in recent weeks issued grand jury subpoenas to multiple people linked to Trump's 2020 campaign, a sharp acceleration of their criminal investigation into efforts to overturn Joe Biden's victory in the state. Good. Don't leave Georgia all alone on this one, bringing state charges, especially as we see the sideshow of Fani Willis's life being dragged through the mud by Republicans hoping that they can use it as a shield. The new steps first reported here are a sign that Attorney General Chris Mays, a Democrat, is nearing a decision on whether to charge Trump's allies in the state, including GOP activists who falsely posed as presidential electors in December of 2020. 6 people were granted anonymity to share these details about the ongoing investigation. The Attorney General's office declined to comment. It was not clear whether Mays is considering charging people charges against people close to Trump's national campaign, or whether her investigation remains focused on the Arizona GOP officials and activists who aided Trump's bid to overturn the state's presidential results. In November, Mays told CNN that the investigation is, quote, robust, but that doesn't tell us much of anything. Mays investigators are scrutinizing the so-called alternate electors who signed paperwork falsely claiming that Trump had won the state. Prosecutors in Georgia, Michigan, and Nevada have already brought charges against pro-Trump fake electors in their states. Mays' team has also asked those people about Trump himself, as well as former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and Trump attorneys John Eastman and Kenneth Chesebro, who's also got another round of revelations in the news that we didn't get to yet. Chesebro, an architect of Trump's scheme to organize slates of false electors in 6 states won by Biden, pleaded guilty for his role in that scheme in Georgia, as he's cooperated with investigators in Nevada, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He agreed late last year to speak to Arizona prosecutors as well. Several prominent Arizona Republicans aided Trump's post-election efforts, including former state GOP chairwoman Kelly Ward, who was one of the 11 activists who posed as fake electors in the state. 2 of the other fake electors, Jake Hoffman and Anthony Kern, are state senators. The state became a focal point of Trump's efforts to unravel Biden's victory, featuring some of the earliest, loudest, and flimsiest claims of election fraud. Trump then pushed then House Speaker Rusty Bowers and then Governor Doug Ducey to help him. Their resistance helped scuttle Trump's plan and put them at odds with Ward and other party leaders who favored Trump's radical approach. That's an interesting way of putting it. Criminal approach. Forged approach. Mays could become the final prosecutor to bring charges related to Trump's efforts to resist the 2020 election results. At the federal level, Special Counsel Jack Smith has charged Trump with conspiracy to disenfranchise millions of voters. And in Georgia, state prosecutors charged the former president and 18 of his allies with a racketeering conspiracy to meddle in the election there. The attorneys general in Michigan and Nevada have also charged the Republicans who falsely claimed to be their state's presidential electors. Asked about the escalation of the Arizona probe, George Terwilliger, A lawyer from Meadows said, as the Supreme Court made clear yet again in the Trump versus Anderson decision, federal elections are federal matters. The fiasco in Georgia demonstrates what happens when state officials take it upon themselves to police federal matters. Terwilliger was referring to the Supreme Court decision on Monday, of course, that had actually close to nothing to do with this particular question. But Ward and the other false Arizona electors joined in the late 2020 lawsuit seeking to pressure then Vice President Mike Pence to assert the power to block Biden's victory on January 6, 2021, when he would preside over the electoral vote count in Congress. That lawsuit featured in Smith's indictment of Trump in Washington, D.C., which noted that Trump berated Pence for opposing it. Ward asserted her Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination in response to the efforts by the January 6th Select Committee to subpoena her testimony about those episodes. Ward also fought an effort by the committee to obtain her phone records, but lost at the Supreme Court. For years, Arizona was a Republican stronghold, but that's changing. In 2020, Biden became the first Democratic presidential candidate to win there since 1996. And in 2022, Mays won her race to be Attorney General by just 280 votes. Boy, you see what happens when every vote counts. The state is also home to a competitive 2024 Senate race where Representative Ruben Gallego takes on Kari Lake, one of Trump's staunchest allies. And it was observed by friendly internet denizen known as Twitter's Bobby Bigwheel, Kleinman at Blue Sky, going by, I guess, real name there. I forget now that I think about it. But noting that Chris May's victory was so narrow, it never would have happened if Republicans had gotten vaccinated at the same rate as Democrats. So this is like something you'd see in a Greek tragedy. Yeah, actually true. 280 votes was all it took. Amazing. That probably was a margin of error in vaccination world. Think about it.
In the morning with Waldman.
All right, well, thanks for listening. I'm glad we could get on the air and be here for you today, after all, at regular time. Justice Putnam, on the other hand, has got issues to deal with today that are going to keep his regular show off the air, I think. But he has got Netroots Radio consistent programming available for you, certainly, whether it's a rerun or something else coming next. We'll see you tomorrow.